Welcome to Let's Talk Para, the podcast where we talk about all things para sport. I'm Yasmina Isa, a para badminton player, and I'm thrilled to bring you inspiring stories from athletes, coaches, researchers, and everyone shaping the para sport movement. If you're passionate about para sport or just hearing about it now, join me each episode as we delve into the world of para sport. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Para, where we talk about all things para sport. Joining me today is James Hollis. James is a Paralympic para swimmer and a Commonwealth bronze medalist. He's also a world record holder. James, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So James, you've had an extensive para swimming career. So take me back to the very beginning. How did it all start for you?
Absolutely. So I was born with a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, along with my sister who had the same, and my mum was diagnosed with it as well. That is basically a condition that means your bones break easily. So, things like running, jumping, that was always going to be a problem. And if I did do, your normal kid breaking an arm, it was more likely to be shattered, little breaks. So, spent a lot of time growing up in hospitals and wasn't allowed to do the traditional football, rugby, hockey sports. So, coming from a fairly active family, they were really keen to keep fit, so we signed up for swimming lessons and clubs, and found a nice little sort of family friendly club down in Epping Forest where I grew up, and that's where the swimming career kind of started.
Yeah, did your family know much about para sport before you got into para swimming?
So no, I was doing quite well at this club, and it was something that I could do that was competitive. So I picked fly swimming because at that age no one wanted to do it, so I could win medals by being the only person that did it. And I sort of progressed through the normal pathway. The club was quite small. There was nobody that had an impairment before, and we were really fortunate that a woman joined our club who had a single arm amputation, and she had already kind of been scouted, as it were. She knew about the para, or what was disability swimming pathway at the time, and her mum became friends with my mum and just suggested, have you thought about getting a classification? So we signed up, sent off all of the documents. My mum sent off all of the documents. I had no idea. I just got dragged up to Sheffield when I was about 13 years old. Sat on a bench, had all my limbs and things moved around by three
classifiers.
Yeah, three classifiers, three people in that felt like white lab coats, and measuring all scientifically. And then someone said swim up and down the pool, do some different strokes, and I was given this number that was S10 at the time, and I was like, oh cool, so I can do this. It was on the back of a swimming competition that we could have only done if we'd been classified, so that was quite lucky that we didn't have a wasted trip to Sheffield. So we raced at the junior nationals the following 2 days, and I was just a really average club swimmer. We did medals down to 6th, and I was constantly 5th and 6th. And I went to this meet, and I remember, coming away with a handful of golds, handful of silvers, handful of bronzes, and a trophy. And I was like, oh, hang on a second, I'm winning this, people. I remember a head coach at the time coming up and was like, oh, you're right, champ, in his really strong Aussie accent. And it really felt like, oh, hang on a second, this actually means something. This is good fun.
Yeah.
And we went home at the end of the weekend, and that was the swimming life that just started. All these doors had just opened, and for somebody that was standing on the side of cold football pitches in PE kit because I wasn't allowed to get involved, and we weren't at the stage of talking inclusive in PE lessons to, oh, I can be a sporty person. I remember in primary school I got given a C for effort on a PE report card, and I remember my family being a little bit annoyed by that, because how can you give somebody a C when they've not been allowed to do it?
And what do you base that off of?
Yeah,
that's not even... Yeah,
exactly. It was like, oh yeah, we're going to give you this completely middle of the range grade because of you just, you've not done anything to go either way of that.
Oh, but by that standard, they should have just said fit. Like, if they failed, that would have been the thing that's like you're not participating. Not saying that would have been right, but that would have been. But a C, just like, well, you don't know what to give him, so you just assign the random grade.
Yeah, and you know, it was like, and there's no sort of blame or anything with this, but that was my relationship with PE all the way through secondary school until I realised it was going to be something that I could get a good grade in at A level, and thought, sign up to that. But you know, I'm doing, alongside sort of growing up, I'm doing these amazing things in the pool and on talent programs, development programs, and you know, starting to have conversations about where could you go with this sport, and coming home to, oh, you're not a PE person. I remember skipping PE at GCSE level because, and I'd just leave, I had my kit with me, but I'd just leave it somewhere randomly around the school and be like, oh, I forgot my kit, because what's the point of me going and changing? Like, or I can go and do some of my coursework so I don't have to do it when I'm at home.
Yeah.
So that was, there was sort of two things going on there. And that academic life was very much, you know, pushed by my parents in the sense of, you know, you're good at numbers, you're good at data, that kind of stuff. Like, put some effort in. I was not the best at putting effort in at school. And then there was come home and do the thing I really enjoyed, which was train. And I could work really hard, and I could push and build this swimmer identity.
So you were basically leading kind of a double life. On one end, you were on the road to becoming a world-class para swimmer. And on the other end, you were still not being allowed to participate in PE. Was the school aware of you, like the development pathways you were on, all the like swimming stuff you were achieving?
Yeah, absolutely. The school were, I moved school about the same time I got my classification.
Oh, okay.
And the school that I moved to were incredibly supportive of the swimming and of the impairment. We had a brilliant SEN department who, you know, had lifts around the school. So when I did break a leg or had a broken arm, the school did everything for me. And they were incredible. But because I didn't really felt like I fit in, because this wasn't, I wasn't able to be myself in that environment. I found that quite difficult. Whereas going to the pool, I was a completely different person, and you know, that was where my social life was. That's where my friends were. That's where I felt that I could achieve and I could do what I wanted.
Yeah. So then you obviously were playing it. You were on the pathway. When was it? What was the moment that you were like, I want to become a world record holder or a Paralympian? Like, when was that moment of shift to playing it, you know, just for fun, or that to being elite?
Yeah, so my sister's 2 years older than me, and she got a different classification to what I got, and she was quite quickly thrown onto a much higher part of the program. So I believe, this could be wrong, that she went to her first major in 2010, maybe 2009. It was the Europeans, and she was sort of like, at the time, she was the one that they were focused on because she was there winning medals. But there was a lot of expectation and a lot of spoken about, you know, James, we don't have any S10, which is these physical impairments coming through, really. There was me and another lad that both trying. But there was a big gap between us and the older lads that were already racing. And both of us were really told we could do it, we could make it, and given the support and the resources to be able to do it. I stumbled a few times in, you know, I remember we used to have to get our development times at a meet in Swansea in December, and pretty much 3 years in a row I was injured with a broken something or other, and I missed it many years in a row. And I found that really difficult, especially with people that thought that I was better than, probably wasn't, but thought I was better than, that were accelerating through this pathway, and I felt that I wasn't. And then when I was 15, 16, well, it's so long ago now, I had major spinal surgery. So I was out for about 6 months, which was much shorter than I expected. They thought it'd be a year. But that was, I decided to read loads of motivational books like the Michael Phelps autobiography and stuff like that when I was off, and I came back, and I remember going to the swimming pool with my back brace on, just watching swimming because my sister was in, my friends were there. Even when there was no one swimming. I think I got my mum to drop me off, and I ended up talking to all my friends' parents, and it was when I came back from that, something clicked. I knew how hard I'd worked to get back, but I started to get like development times, and then the following year I got myself kind of scraped onto the Europeans team that would be in 2011. Just trying to work out dates in my head there. And I scraped onto the Europeans team, and I'd done a really good time that year. And it was, oh, hang on a second, this is no longer just a development. This guy's, at the time, the world record was about 57 or 58, and I'd just gone a 101 or a minute. And, oh yeah, okay, you can do it. You can do quite well here. Came fourth at Europeans. We got a medal in the relay, and it was an awesome meet. I had a really good friend who I started rooming with all the time, who just won about 5 European gold medals because he's amazing. And that really pushed me on. The next year, I got taken to a training camp in South Africa with the senior team, and basically told there is, if you go British record time, there's a good chance that you'll get taken for the relay to London. So, oh right, okay. I'm still probably about second off it at this moment, and I was like, okay, they're keen on me to be here. Like, I'm gonna keep pushing. And we had 2 qualification meets that year. The first one I did okay. I got the British record, but it wasn't the best swim. There was still more in the tank. And then the following one, it was at the New Aquatic Centre. I think a bit of adrenaline got to me. Those extra couple of weeks of training got through, and I swam a awesome time, and actually just missed qualifying on the individual by about 2/100ths of a second. But as I'd qualified for the relay, I could still swim it, which was a really great experience. And I'd got myself on this 2012 team, and I remember the coach phoning me and being like, expect a letter and some kit. And I was like, yes, that's brilliant, I've done it. And that was when it kind of all changed from being, I'm on this pathway to I'm there.
Yeah. So you went to the Paralympics in 2012.
Yeah.
Which commies did you go to then?
That 10 years later, 22.
Oh wow.
So I qualified for London. Both me and my sister qualified for London. And about 6 weeks, we didn't have a great games as a family. About 6 weeks before the games, I was on a training camp in Mallorca, and I broke my right arm, which was awesome because it got me out of A-levels. Someone had to write for me in my A-levels.
Out of curiosity, how many times have you broken like your arm? Or
more than I can count on each limb. I genuinely have no idea. A lot when I was younger, but less so now. Apart from a couple of years ago when I completely shattered it.
I actually remember seeing you. I think. I actually can't remember. I might have seen you with, but yeah.
3 weeks after Commonwealth Games. Yeah.
Yeah. So how was so you always got a bronze medal at the commies. 10-year gap between the Paralympics and the commies. So what was that 10-year gap? Was that like, did you try to qualify for the other Paralympics, or was it?
Yeah, so I, as I said, it was kind of like it was a tougher game. So I broke my arm, and then at the games, my sister broke her ankle and her elbow, and she still swam. I mean, she came last, as you would with a broken ankle and a broken elbow.
Yeah.
But she still swam, which for me, was awesome that she was able to do it. But seems that she's a lunatic. I then instantly relocated up to Loughborough, where I joined the university program at Loughborough, and that was like the continuation of the start of my senior career. I had a good couple of years to start with at Loughborough, and went to World Champs the following year, Europeans a year later. I then got myself injured again. There's a theme of injuries. In 2014, I was doing a teaching and coaching lecture, and I fell and landed on my shoulder blade and broke my shoulder blade.
Oh wow.
I had such amazing support from what was EIS at the time and the uni. We did everything we could to get back, and I did get back to qualifying for Europeans that year, so it was amazing. But what we didn't realise was that September, when I got back from Europeans, I had a nerve palsy in my shoulder, and all of the back of my shoulder, all the muscles switched off. So for the beginning of term up till Christmas, I couldn't do anything externally with my left arm. That really put me back. The times had really stepped up. There were some new guys on the scene. They had really smashed the world records and moved the world forward. And so a time when I needed to step up, I wasn't able to train. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. Swimming became everything, the entire focus, and I just put so much pressure on myself that my performances started to deteriorate. That kind of grew and grew and grew until qualification for 2016, where I unfortunately just missed the qualifying time. So didn't get myself on the plane to Rio, where I thought to myself, this has got to be it. Like, I'm not really going anywhere with this swimming thing. I've done some cool stuff, but it's time I'd just finished my undergrad. It's probably time to get a job. Then when I asked myself that question, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I didn't know if there was any options for what I wanted to do. So I did what every person does when they don't know what to do and signed up for a master's degree. I was really lucky that there was somebody working at the new NCSCM at the time who was running a master's course, was a swimmer, and they had been incredibly supportive during when I'd done their modules the year before. So that seems like a really natural point of something I enjoy around sports injuries, something that I was pretty good at, and also somebody that was really, really supportive. And I decided that I was going to carry on swimming because the scholarship was going to help me fund that year. I massively pulled everything back from my training plan. So where I was doing sort of 20 hours a week, I ended up in double sessions. I ended up training once a day instead of twice. And I probably stripped it back to 12, maybe 13 hours a week of swimming. And it was the best year I had in the water. So I was really struggled with it up till Christmas because I didn't really want to be there, didn't know what I was aiming at. And post-Christmas, I swam some of the fastest times I'd ever done and ended up number 1 in the world at the World Series meet in Sheffield that year. And I thought to myself, brilliant, okay, right, I'm going to really, something's clicked.
I'm going to reevaluate and go for it.
Yeah, I just had this motivation. It was just, I'd always had this identity that I was damn good at swimming. I was a swimmer. I always thought I was better than what my results had suggested. There's obviously some ego in that, but this world number 1, even in a slightly softer year, was a massive achievement for me, and made me renewed my commitment to I'm gonna go after this. I then, at the end of my masters, I relocated to the National Centre in Manchester. It was a tough year. I think the emotions of the years before kind of all accumulated and just meant that I was carrying a lot of extra emotional stress than would have been conducive to good performances. And that question of why do I do this was almost changing every day. So it was more and more difficult to really drive myself and have that purpose. So that year when I reflect back on it, that year actually went okay, but at the end of it, I was just exhausted, and I had to stop. I had to call it a day. It wasn't. I couldn't answer that question of why anymore. It wasn't who I wanted to be, and it just become too much. So probably what I needed was a good break. With everything of missing games, I didn't have a break. I didn't let myself recover, and so probably what I needed when I reflected was a good break. But at the time, all I wanted was out. So I left. I was living on my own in Manchester, still in the position of not knowing what I wanted to do, no job, and swimming had stopped. So I was forced. I had to get a job, and I dotted around a few different roles, some absolutely brilliant ones, and some ones that were challenging or kind of not leading where I wanted them to. And I ended up getting a job back at the uni, so as a performance lifestyle coach, just half a day a week at the time, alongside what was hopefully a strength and conditioning career. When I was in that role, the para program at Loughborough grew, and they hired a coach to be specifically the para swimming coach lead for the university swim team, and he transitioned into the role and was sort of trying to build this program. And for the first time ever, they had my event at Commonwealth Games at a home games in 22. And at the time, I was working for the BPA, and I was out in Tokyo, and I was, this is cool. Even Tokyo, that didn't have crowds and wasn't quite the same atmosphere, I thought, this is cool. this is what it's about. So I texted him. I was like, what do you think? What do you think to this? And he was like, yeah, well, it's going to be tough. It's been a few years and a few kilos since you were a top level athlete. But if you want to give it a go, there's space. Let's try it. And
so for the commies, this
was, well, it was 2021 at the time because Tokyo was back that year. But so I'd done a little bit beforehand, but then I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going for this now. And I was flying home, and my manager at the time said to me, I was discussing it with her on the plane. I feel sorry for her because that was a 10-hour flight, and she was listening to me going on and on about swimming the entire time. So apologies. But yeah, so and she said that there's some fire there. I can see it in your eyes. There's some fire. There's some ambition, and like, this is going to be your chance. You're not going to get another one. So I signed up. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Regretted it for about 4 months when I remembered how hard swimming training actually is.
Yeah.
But
the 5 a.m.s.
Yeah, I tried to get out. I still tried to get out of those. Instead of running joke when I say the coach and he's like, hey, you did 2 mornings. I remember doing at least a couple. But yeah, we really pushed, and it was tough, and it was all those things that performance sport is. But we just built and built and built. Qualified for world champs, which I hadn't done since 2013.
Oh wow.
That was just an extra. Had some cool training camps abroad, good tans. That was something I hadn't had for a while as well, so especially with not being going on holiday in COVID.
Yeah.
And then we went to the games, and I had this amazing opportunity to bookend my career with the 2012 home games and the 2022 home games. And it enabled me to relive some of those experiences that really, over the course of 10 years, I had maybe forgotten how they felt. So yeah, it was just incredible. And then I decided to fall off a hill in Wales and shatter my arm, and that was like, well, I'm done now.
I feel like every few sentences now it's gonna be, I fell off.
There's a few of, I fell off this, I fell off that, I broke this bone, I broke that bone. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So you've obviously been involved within parasport for a really long time in para swimming, and one of the key things about parasport is what people call the Paralympic movement. So, what is the Paralympic movement for you?
Yeah. So this. When I was thinking about this coming into having a chat with you was, it's completely individual. So what I feel as a Paralympic movement as a para swimmer with a bone impairment versus yourself is going to be slightly different. And for me, it's about trying to change the narrative of impairment from, oh, you can't do this, so we have to change this. You can't do this, so we have to change this. To actually look how awesome I can be. So it's about changing the narrative in the world for those people that have impairments, and we do that through sport, and whether that's inclusive sport at the bottom end of the pathway, or whether that's through some of the phenomenal performances we see at Paralympic Games. Yeah.
No, I think I agree with the part about you saying look how awesome someone could be, because I like the term that I know it's but differently abled. When people say that, I like that it's when people say it, because it's just I can do it, but you just haven't provided me with the means of being able to do it. And I think that's really important. But so the Paralympic movement, why do you think? What makes it so different than the Olympic movement, for example, or what makes it so different?
I think, and just touching back on kind of what you said, we're not disabled by our impairments. We're disabled by the environments that we inhabit. So, if you're a wheelchair user and somewhere only has stairs, that is far more disabling than somewhere that is all on one level or has good lift access. Yeah. So I think that piece around what the Paralympics does is it puts us in environments where we aren't disabled by the environment, and we can go and achieve awesome things.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost the second part of your question there.
About the Olympic, what makes the Paralympic movement a movement as opposed to the Olympics?
So I think both are movements.
Yeah.
What makes it different is, for me, this means more. great performances are great performances. You know, if we see somebody pole vault over a higher height or run 100 meters quicker than anybody else, that is incredible and it should inspire, it should motivate. But what I have seen is that we go into these sporting environments, people go, that's awesome. Oh yeah, but I'm not sure whether that they're going to be any good in a work environment, or I'm not sure they can drive a car that well. So actually, is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the attitude around disability and impairment. We're not looking for sympathy of, oh wow, look what you can do despite this. It's actually, I can just do. I can just get on and do it. I can be brilliant at the thing that I choose to be brilliant at. And I think that's where the Paralympic movement really comes into its own, is we're trying to change people's attitudes to a whole group of people, to 15% of the population. Yeah. And that's what we're really trying to drive forward through performance and high level sport. Yeah.
So the Paralympic movement extends to, we call it the Paralympic movement, but it's not exclusive to the Paralympic. It's just the movement for people with disabilities around the world looking to get involved within sport, really. So extending this to NGBs and universities, then where do you see the current offerings are, and where do you see areas of improvement within those to fulfill like the Paralympic movement vision?
The challenge for me is around, if we look at the decision makers in Paralympic sport at the moment, we look at the boards, we look at senior leadership, we look at strategy makers. There are not people with impairments or Paralympians in those spaces, or if there are, they're very few. They're not the 15% makeup that your general population is. So we absolutely need to get people that understand lived experiences better. I think there is a piece around, I know many swimming coaches that were Olympians or world athletes, European athletes. I don't know anyone that is coaching that was a Paralympian. And of course, multiple sports in which I work, there is probably a handful of coaches working across those sports and doing brilliant jobs to show it can be done. Yeah. But why is it harder to transition from being a Paralympic athlete to a coach? And even in that space, why does it have to be in power sport? For example, if you wanted to coach, why couldn't you coach Olympic badminton? Yeah. So I think there's something there around the transition. What I think as well is around, we're getting better and better and better at inclusive sport. So having offerings that are about having anybody, and whether that's impairment, gender, race, whatever that is, we're getting much better at building opportunities for anyone to compete in sport. There's still a long way to go, but we're getting better at it. What we're not doing very well is we're going, they're great sport, but how is that transitioning into what's next? And then there's a piece around equity as well. So I think for me, growing up in the sport where it was very separate, I always wanted it to be inclusive, and I wanted to be part of, say, like the Olympic swimming training programs. And we took those steps towards that direction, but I don't think we've taken the step now towards, actually, let's think of this more on a more individualised area and go, Paralympians and parasport athletes need something different to Olympic athletes. Yeah. So actually giving people what they need rather than everybody the same.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. That's the whole equality versus equity argument. You can't, by the nature of things, parasport will need sometimes more things. But you touched on the integration element. So were you referring to that as in training, like you want to be integrated with the like non-disabled counterpart?
It can be, it can be training, it can be competition, it can be anything. Integration and inclusivity in these areas it's really challenging, because there is, unless you really put loads of time and focus on it, you can very much end up with an unequal split and unequal focus. So my example, this was always, and it's been a few years since I've done it, but I remember at Bucks, and Bucks having Paralympic and non-disabled swimming events on the same weekend, but there wasn't finals. There was only a handful of swimmers. They weren't equal the same in the Bucks points. So it was they were together, but it wasn't equitable. It wasn't encouraging more Paralympic athletes to be involved. So I think there's a really fine line between chucking everyone in together, and giving people an event or a training environment that they need.
I agree with that, but I think it could go both ways. Like, I was in one of my world champs, or the badminton was integrated with the para badminton, so you had badminton in one hall, and then right next to it was para badminton, so you got the crowd from that to watch para badminton, which was the first time, or one of the first times we had a crowd. But I get what you mean about Bucks, because when I played Bucks, it was only like me and another pair, and the other pair were two guys, and it was me and obviously you got to start somewhere, but at the same time it's not like that's gonna be really what you want when you play Bucks. But yeah,
and you've got the Paralympic versus Commonwealth Games scenario there, and Commonwealth Games, I was fortunate that my event was there, so I could be part of this inclusive competition. I think it was the most Paralympic events over the course of a Commonwealth Games, and the most female events over the course of a Commonwealth Games. But is that, on the power side, is that what we actually needed? So, by having only a handful of events, have we limited opportunities for for Paralympics to grow within the Commonwealth? Are we, by hand selecting events, are we saying that these events are worth more? And what does this first Paralympics, which in Paris went to the swimming and it was full, was an incredible crowd, and absolutely had, as a standalone event, did amazing things for the movement. It was where the movement should be and where the movement needs to go, and it's about getting the balance of those two kind of formats. So for me, and if we look at your World Championships, is what exactly, or your Bucks experience, is what exactly does this cohort of people need to grow and to get the opportunities from sport that they could?
Yeah.
And just putting them together and saying this is a one-size-fits-all model isn't going to enable us to grow those opportunities or enable either of us as para athletes to take those opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, now shifting on a bit to your role now within. So you are performance lifestyle.
Yep.
In the UKSI.
Yeah, so performance lifestyle practitioner with UK Sports Institute.
Yes.
Working with British Paralympic shooting, and also a performance lifestyle advisor with the Lawn Tennis Association, working on the wheelchair pathway.
So what is the significance of performance lifestyle?
So for me, performance lifestyle is that holistic support for an athlete outside of their training or competitions. So, as a swimmer, I got strength and conditioning, I got physiology, I got nutrition, I got psychology, all helping me swim faster. But I'd go home and I'd have to still, or not have to, I would make bad decisions and end up trying to write essays at 11 o'clock at night, or I would do way too many social activities and then realise that I now need a week off just to recover. So where performance lifestyle has a really great impact is around helping the athlete balance their needs as a person and their needs as a performer, so that they can, make the most of both worlds and be successful in what they choose to be successful in.
Yeah, and do you feel like performance lifestyle for a para athlete would be different than performance lifestyle for a non-para athlete?
That's a really hard question. So I'm going to caveat this answer with everybody is different.
Fair enough.
So, we have a person-centered approach, and the way I will work with one athlete, irrelevant of impairment, will be different to the way I work with another athlete. We always say I'm like meeting them where they're at, and providing them the support and the coaching that they need at the time. So it is different. It is kind of individualized and different per person. I would say the topics of conversation change. I once had an athlete describe it to me as a wheelchair user and a spinal cord injury, that they were turning up 2/3 full. Where, you know, a 7 a.m. start time for me might be roll out of bed at 6:30, but for them that could be 4 a.m. You know, it's like we all have individual needs that we need to go through before starting our day. So having that awareness of what that individual has done and or needs support with before they even turn up to train is really important. And those needs are likely to be much greater and much wider variation in what they are in a Paralympic world than a Olympic one.
Yeah, you also touched earlier on about like pathways for coaches. Do you think performance lifestyle, like that could be one of the targets of performance lifestyles, to actually provide a pathway for para athletes into the Paralympic world of coaching or anything like that, really?
So absolutely. Career development is one of our pillars, one of our massive focus points, where we look at any role and we look at supporting them to identify opportunities and challenges that they might have, and whether that's somebody that's a wheelchair user or has a sensory impairment accessing office space in central London. You know, how do we overcome those barriers? What do we need? How does that person speak with their future employer around making that happen and making that work for them? That's a massive point, and that development is a massive part for performance lifestyle to have an impact on. There has to be a change in narrative for it to work completely. So I mentioned earlier, and you see a performance of a Paralympian that's, you know, goes and breaks the world record by 4 seconds. You go, wow, they're amazing. But there's like an undertone of sympathetic bias with this around, okay, yeah, they're brilliant, look what they've overcome, but are they going to be able to do what it takes to be a coach to a national centre? Or are they going to be able to put the time in? Or are they going to be as good at, you know, they swim with one arm, so how good are they going to be at technical advice? I don't think it's spoken about. I think it's underlying. I think it's an attitude that you can't be, if you're going to transition from being an Olympian to a coach, from a Paralympian to a coach. Well, an Olympian, these guys are the fastest. These are the absolute fastest guys in the world. Versus, actually, this person's slower than the athlete they're coaching, but that's because they've got a high level of impairment. Yeah. So there's definitely some bias there that really needs to be challenged, and that needs to be challenged at a systematic level. So we need to know, the system needs to support that transition better. We can focus more in like a performance lifestyle athlete support space about helping them develop the skills they need to be a good coach. But realistically, we need case studies of athletes in coaching roles, senior leadership roles, board roles, where they've gone and done it. This person's gone and done it really well, and that being a case study to go, well, look, this is something that I know to be true, but this person is already doing it, so here's your evidence. Not every person should need to be a trailblazer. Not everybody should be, you know, finding the new path. Sometimes you can still be a brilliant and you can be a brilliant person and achieve loads by following in the footsteps of somebody else. And I think in parasport, especially in the coaching space and the practitioner space as well, it's you're having to be the first, always having to be the first to do X, to do Y. And I, even in my role, I feel incredibly fortunate that my performance lifestyle coach when I was an athlete was a VI judoka. So actually I wasn't going into a space where I had to be the first. And I do think that that's one of the contributing reasons to why I ended up in a PL coaching space. Yeah, and you touched on the like coaching element of it. Like I think with non-disabled sport, a lot of the coaches never actually made it to the top. And I think some of the best coaches in the world have never actually been I'm talking non-disabled right now, are not like Olympians. But being an Olympian or a Paralympian doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good coach. But I think we always have that, if you've done so well in your sport, you must be a great coach. And so if you flip that, if you could be like a disabled person, not having made
made it to the Paralympics, but you could still be a great coach, just like the non-disabled counterparts who perhaps weren't able to make it to the Olympics, but were able to coach Olympians. And I think that's where we got to understand that there is no big difference. There might be a different approach in the way you coach based on disability, but that doesn't undermine how good the coaching level probably will be.
Yeah, and you know, barriers, depending on where you're entering from, barriers are different. What really is stark and stands out to myself is that there is a lot of transition from the top end of, say, swimming into Olympic swimming into coaching, but that doesn't exist from Paralympic swimming into coaching.
Yeah.
So, and I don't believe for a second that no Paralympic swimmers want to be coaches. I don't believe that. So, for me, that highlights that there is a barrier and we need to do more to explore it. If we're having sort of coaches coming into the sport that actually have never been an athlete in that sport, but we're not getting anyone with an impairment coming through that route, that's probably that could be a different barrier. It could be the same barrier, but for me it's an unknown barrier.
Yeah.
And that's where the system needs to do a little bit more around exploring what that might be. You know, and if we go back to 15% of the population have an impairment of some kind, actually in our coaching circles, our practitioner circles, sport management, whatever it is, if we're not seeing that level of diversity, then there could be a barrier stopping somebody from entering into that field, and that's where we as a system can do more to explore.
Yeah, I think, like you said, at the end of the day, it is challenging the systemic, like, status quo, basically, of what already exists and what needs to happen. So my last question actually is, what advice would you give someone looking to get into parasport, whether that be a similar position, they're not non-disabled, so similar position, or something along like a practitioner within parasport?
For anybody or somebody with an impairment?
To get involved with someone in parasport, like to get involved within the parasport movement. What advice would you give to someone looking to get involved in the parasport movement?
I think for me, we can do a lot of work on strategy. We can talk systems. There's lots of bits of great work being done to try and support parasport, but the biggest thing that I think I've learned is that we need to get out there and we need to get to know the people that are doing the sport, that are involved in sport, that are, you know, the Paralympians through to the recreational athletes with impairments.
Yeah.
Like, we just get out there and get to know, meet people, network, just get involved. One of my first roles, I worked at a complex needs school in Manchester, and coming from a sport which is quite a low impairment level, like it's a low needs impairment level. It was eye opening to go into the school to see actually the spectrum of impairments that are in the world.
Yeah.
So that was a massive, and getting to know like the carers, the teachers, the families, the kids, that was massively eye opening to me. And my advice would just be for anyone that wants to get involved in this space is go and meet the people.
Yeah.
The people are what make it.
Yeah, I think so. Multiple people have always said this. The athlete is your biggest asset in parasport. You could, nothing they tell you you'll be able to find in like a textbook or anything like that. And I think that's what makes it so special, how everyone's so different.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, apart from I'd say the person rather than the athlete. Because you're a whole person approach.
the person. All right, last part. I'm going to ask you a few questions.
This is the bit I was most worried by.
What, this last part?
Yeah, the last part.
So these are quick fire, or rapid fire. So first thing comes to mind, just answer it. I won't say them quickly, but first thing that comes to mind, answer it. So, who's your biggest inspiration in swimming?
Oh, okay. So when I started, it was definitely Michael Phelps. Just wanted to be able to fly kicks like him. As I went through, one of my best friends was Ollie Hines, and I think he was massively inspirational. about what he achieved, and just now it's just any of the guys that I swam with and are still swimming, like, they're all awesome.
Fair enough. How do you celebrate after a big win?
Oh, how did I celebrate at Commonwealth Games? I think it was the last night, so I think we ended up in a club in Birmingham. But that's not always possible because you're in the middle of competition. So I think we spend a lot of time away from phones and things like that, and there's quite a few that your friends and your family want to check in, and I think it's just about reconnecting with the people you care about.
Yeah. If you could compete when you were competing in any other sport, what would it be?
So if I didn't have my impairment, I wanted to play rugby. My dad played rugby, and I grew up watching rugby. There was no football in our house, so I would have done that. And when I stopped swimming, but sort of was like considering talent transfer, I thought para canoe would be really cool, but I'm definitely not tall enough or big enough for that.
Fair enough. Pre-race ritual or superstition?
Caffeine. No superstitions. I was a bit of a caffeine fiend, so I did enjoy getting as much as possible. But music on, getting moving a little bit. I had I think I did like 4 jumps, 4 press ups, and 4 med ball slams.
Oh wow.
At like sort of cool room. But when I was younger, I wanted to do more and more, like getting pumped up. As I got older, I was more like, let's just relax.
Yeah.
Just be calm.
Favorite training drill?
Ooh. So there's this drill in swimming called Biondi. Basically, it's like a fly stroke, but you don't do the recovery over the top. You put fins on, and you can see how far you go each time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it takes a while, and you can go quite slow between. So it's me just chilling out between like each rep of it.
Fair enough. So you like it because you could rest, basically.
Yeah, I was a sprinter. Anything that could be incorporated into rest was always a good thing.
Fair enough.
Least amount of work possible.
Fair enough. And favorite meal or snack post training?
I was going towards some sort of like milkshake. I like a milkshake, like a protein milkshake, or one of those yogurt pot thing. The squeezy yogurt pots you can get. They've got a good chunk of protein in. They're always quite good.
My last question for the day: what does success mean to you?
How do you answer that quick fire? For me, there's something goal orientated about. I want to achieve the things that I set out to achieve.
Yeah.
But again, as I'm kind of growing in my role and as I'm moving forward as a practitioner and as a coach, there's something about the impact that I'm having on others. So I coach at a small club just down the road, and when some of the youngsters come and they ask questions that aren't swimming related, or they show me that they've learned something, that's massively motivating and inspiring for me.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something I want to achieve, and I want to leave sort of my legacy and do X, Y, Z. But the impact and the people that I meet along the way is really important.
Fair enough. That is all the questions from me. James, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone for listening.
And producing.